Good noon, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you all at the Vimarsha's inaugural session. To just give you a gist, Vimarsha is a fully student-run initiative taken by the club Vajra of Flame University to build a powerful leadership talk in terms of reframing Indian policies, Indian institutions, individuals, and across changing the global scenario. So for our inaugural session, we are very honored and grateful to have Sri Suresh Prabhu sir, Member of Parliament and former Union Minister. Sir, I'll just give you an anecdote, sir. I just heard you for the first time at IMC's annual general meeting, and your views there were so visionary and transformation towards Indian railway system. You talked about railways at that time. That your thoughts were so visionary. You're the first honor to have us at Vimarsha, sir. I'll just share the theme and sub-themes. So today's theme is reimagining India, reshaping the decade, and two sub-themes are new growth frontiers and swift action for development. VC sir will give the opening remarks following with Suresh Prabhu sir guiding us to the theme speech, followed by a question and answer discussion with students, and lastly, Dean of Flame School of Business will close the session, sir. So I'll just hand over the space to our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Dishan Kamdar, sir. Please, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Akash, and a warm welcome to everyone. And Sri Suresh Prabhu, it's an honor to have you with us today. I'm lost of words. When I'm trying to describe the impact that Sri Suresh Prabhu has had, on the Indian broader economic forward. So I will just summarize by saying that he is one of the most prominent and influential political leaders we've had in India. He has been an honorary member of the Parliament and also, the Government of India Sherpa for G20 and G7. Sir, it's a privilege and honor to have you with us. Thank you for accepting our invitation to deliver your keynote on our leadership series organized by our highly motivated students at Flame University. The topic, reimagining India and developing the next decade is very apt. We are going through unprecedented times today. There's a lot of uncertainty looming around us. But with this uncertainty, I think there is an opportunity for us to reimagine India and reshape for the next decade. I do see an opportunity for us to, reshape the ambitions and dreams and aspirations of our new generation, of our young population, who will drive India's growth. An opportunity for us. In fact, it's time for us to reshape our policies, both inward-looking and outward-looking policies that would spur economic growth, make us self-reliant, and also strengthen our globalization efforts. On the social front, I think it's time for us to rethink and reshape our lives, our goals, our careers, and to strengthen the social fabric so that we can become much more responsible citizens of India. With these positive words, I now invite Sri Suresh Prabhu to deliver his inaugural speech. Over to you, sir.
So thank you very much, Vice Chancellor Saab. Also thank Akash for widening the horizon, because he's Akash, so his horizon is so wide that he is thinking about reimagining India. And so therefore I am very happy that you have thought about such a beautiful idea as to how we should try to work on many of these interesting issues. And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. Honor.
And I know about your institution, your school. In fact, My dear friend Vallabh Bhansali has been telling me to visit. So today, of course, unfortunately, I'm not able to come there physically, but still I'm able to relate with you. So I'm very thankful to you for inviting me. When we talk about, I just saw the topic, and because last few days, every day I'm talking, at least 4-5 in a day. I crossed more than probably 200. I reached out to more than 1 crore families in the last few days who directly tuned in on very different subject, maybe 65, 70 subject. So I just saw this, and very interestingly, I'm just expressing my own views on it. Firstly, when you say reimagining India, what is that you have in front of you? Because then only you can reimagine. There must be something in front of you that you want to change, you want to do it better. And when you talk about India, what is the time frame you have in your mind? One, the futuristic, which you're talking about decade. What about the past? And what about the present, in which you have a particular vision of your country? The vision for future is a different thing, but what you see in your own way, because the same India can be seen by different people in a different way. As has happened nowadays, of course, you can see everything, even from geospatial technology, so you can view everything. But the days when people had to be seen our own country from the eyes of others. So those foreign tourists who came to India for some time, they went to some parts of India, and their memoirs, their experiences become a vision of India, because that's how what they saw it. So question is, therefore, when you want to reimagine, the most important thing is what is that you have in your mind, which you can see as your own vision, your own perception, your own, what you see it as from your own eyes. And what is that you want to change in this? When you see something, if it is so perfect, why should you change it? If it is something which has certain infirmities, drawbacks in it, which you feel, which are those drawbacks which you should try to improve? And eventually, what is that we make see as a whole of India? And that may not happen in 10 years, but obviously, a decade is not a small period. How do you actually lay foundation for that future in the next decade? So first, if you go back to, if not much longer, but say a few centuries ago, we had very different kind of a society. We had, at that time, of course, obviously everywhere it was the same, an agrarian society. And that is all over the world, because till industrial revolution came, that is how it was. And those who therefore owned land were very powerful. Those who had livestock to display the wealth were very influential. But even during that period, what was the reason that India was such a sought after country? Why is that people wanted to conquer, attack, if not conquer, at least attack and take something and run away? And then some more ambitious wanted to conquer it and establish their empires here. What is that was there in India which must have attracted people? If it was only for land, then that time there's plenty of land in the world as compared to the number of people who had wanted to use it. If it was only agriculture, if you had a land, obviously you can cultivate. So therefore, was that the only reason why people came? Or is it they came only for that livestock? Did they come for that? Or they came for something else? Even those days, And that is what it is now documented, that India was one of the prominent economies, probably number 2 behind China. Then what must have been the contribution of that economy? What is the profile of that economy that made us number 2? Again, coming back to the point, agriculture, etc., surely. But then there was something else which attracted people and made our economy grow. Of course, spices, but that was from agriculture. But then we used to make, there were a lot of artisans in India. They were the people who had with their hands, with their mind, with their entire body, they had an ability to create something which made India's economy also grow. Those days, not just in India, but anywhere, we are not making steel, cement, or anything like that. So therefore, that was not a part of your economy. So that was the economy which was based on skills. Individuals had a identity, and it grew from one generation to another. Each generation obviously must have added more value to it, must have made it better, but it went genetically from one generation to another. And eventually, we became a source of attraction for other countries to come and attack because we created wealth out of that. And that's how those who had a poetic mind, we said, "Jahan dal dal par sone ki chidiya karti bas hai." The song is new, but it describes the situation at that time. So, when you want to reimagine India, you want to think about that India, which you want to change, or you must think about India which happened after the industrial revolution, when all this, what we had, was lost because machine took over the men. The machine started producing something better. The constitution of GDP changed. The wealth accumulation, the means of accumulating wealth underwent a sea change. Then came a phase in which we had to fight for a freedom from a foreign rule. And this was not just here. The European mainly, who had imperial empires all over the world, everywhere there was an urge for people to drive them out. Not just during our time, even before us. Like in Latin America, when the Spanish and the Portuguese went there, they got their freedom even much earlier. But then the difference is, unfortunately, in Latin America, those who are craving for freedom were not necessarily the people who were the natives of that place. The so-called aborigines were not there because they were already finished. When the Europeans went there, they massacred them and everything. But of course, that is not something which you're talking about. I'm just saying. So their vision of freedom was different because they were not the one who wanted freedom of the land. They wanted those who remained after finishing the aborigines. They felt that if those who are ruling today, the ruling class goes away, then we become the ruling class. But that was only to own the assets, the power, economic as well as political, and maybe even social. Unlike that in India, we wanted a freedom, though may not have been so well articulated at that time. for not just self-rule, but also for probably some of them to regain the past glory, to bring something which made us so attractive to the rest of the world and build a new kind of a society based on probably those ethos, and also will be the masters of our own destiny. We will rule it. And even that time, this ideological debate was on. The people were wanting to know what kind of society will build. Based on that, obviously, that society cannot be the same which was there 300 years ago. The society of today's generation's future vision. See, the generation which are there in 50s and 60s, they obviously will have a vision for themselves, for their future. So they probably had to fight for that particular class. It may not happen in such an ideological debate that we had. But if we look at it, somewhere down the line, Gandhiji captured this very important element of the reason for freedom. They were obviously right from Gokhaleji, Lokmanya Tilak, everybody had that different kind of vision. But Gandhiji said very interestingly that India lives in the villages. Not Indians live in the villages. Obviously, Indians were living in villages, but he said India lives in villages. And of course, I'm just based on my memory, I'm saying. So, what is the meaning of that? That our culture is still not fully lost and still there in the villages, which have become museums for that culture. The custodian of that old tradition, old knowledge, old culture is still there. Let us build it up. Now, today, when we talk about the future and the next decade and reimagining India, as the Vice Chancellor Sahab very correctly pointed out, and Akash, you mentioned it, we have to very clearly, through a very good process of lot of good deliberation, have to articulate a vision for India. Unless we have that clear vision, maybe a decade may be too short a period to realize it. But if you don't have vision, the decade will be a lost decade. So sometimes some people say decade could be a cause of decade. So we decade in a decade. Should we want to decay, or you want to make it a much better period? So if you don't have that vision, I think there are certain obvious elements of that. One is, whether we like it or not, we cannot ignore today's world, not India, world, which is largely influence driven a lot of new technological changes. And we must embrace those technological changes. Firstly, we have no choice to ignore it. We have no choice but to embrace it. I give this example to people. But suppose if there is a tsunami coming, and we have actually faced tsunami, I hope not again, but when we faced it, could entire combined power of 7.3 billion people, with their physical might, economic power, technological prowess, could they have prevented that tsunami? You cannot. So the technologies are not ferocious like tsunamis. I hope not. They could have an adverse consequences as well. But they have the power of that. So they cannot prevent it from coming in. They have to come. So we have to accept the reality of tomorrow's India must be technology driven. We have no choice. And again, I keep repeating this point, I'll repeat again. That technology is not something which we see today, modern technology, and technology was evolved only after industrial revolution, or the fourth industrial revolution that we are now on the threshold of. That is now only that period of last 200, 300 years can be described as technology driven. No, technology has always been there. Even Stone Age was a technology. Using stone is a technology. So technological dimensions have changed, but technology will always be there. But so human beings, the entire history of evolution of a humanity is, and the so-called progress that we made is based on technology alone. The name technology was not there at that time, but that was part of living and part of making changes in their own lifestyle. So future has to be embraced with those technological changes that we want to have, and they will be there always. Challenge was going to be build on that. But how do you build without losing your own ethos and culture? You know, actually, I'm telling you today, some of the societies which are facing challenges, and which we always say, this is not something which I'm telling you new, but something which is said and something which is done are two different things. If you really go to the roots of today's problem, yesterday there was a very interesting discussion by the Jain Gurudev who was talking about, and he wanted me to inaugurate the program. So I was saying it yesterday only. So it's more fresh in my mind. I'm saying all the so-called technological development, where it originates in your mind. So that comes with a thought. Where is the so-called economics? Where does it evolve in your mind? Or you are learning MBA, you are MBA student, Akash and Vice Chancellor Saab and others are here. You read Michael Porter theory, for example. So what are you reading? You are reading his thoughts. And you feel that I must align myself with his thought because he's successful. He has been celebrated, he has been acknowledged. All the major boardrooms of the world will follow his thought because they feel that will give them a successful business model. So ultimately, what are we doing is trying to be politically correct, align our own thinking with the most celebrated successful people's thinking. And in the process of doing that, we lose a possibility of inventing something which comes from my own ethos, my own ideas, because I'm individual. I have my own ability to think differently. But I want to put it aside, because if I say something which is coming from original thinking, I may be politically wrong. People say you are mad, you don't understand. So listen to this book, which is very important book, which is finally the management guru's Bible or Gita or Quran. So we have to read only that. So tomorrow's India, when we want to develop, we must learn from all these people. Because they have also their own experiences which may be guiding to you. But challenge is going to be read it to understand it. Follow the technology as a guiding principle. But can you keep your own individuality to make sure that you do not lose the ability of inventing some new thinking which can make your life and the lives of your fellow citizens better. If you really follow only the model, there's nothing like a model in any case. There are only models in fashion shows, and they're the only ones who can have a model. But I think otherwise there is nothing like model of development or anything like that. So we follow something to know that, oh, it is failing. So now we go to the other model. Socialism failed, now go to capitalism. Capitalism failed, now we'll devolve something else. But India's, that type of India, which was few centuries ago, when we were also a prosperous country and everything else, this happened because the individuals had the ability to progress and develop their own skills to bring it to a level. And people from the world came and wanted to conquer us, attack us, loot us, because that was the well that we created. So a lot of people came, looted and went out also. Now in tomorrow's world, we have to do this to first, the individual's ability, progress should not be done. See, this is a problem of industrial revolution when they came batch. So individual skill was not important that you do in the household. If you're making a good, for example, a cup, for example, you're developing a very nice saucer and a cup. So why you want to do this? I'll make 1 million cups at a time. Then came the next level of revolution, we'll make 1 billion cups at a time. So I can sell it cheap. But fine, that's for industrial production is okay. But you want to keep the similar thing for human beings. You want to human beings also made into this batch production, mass production. Or you want to keep their individuality, their thinking intact. And of course, when they become part of the society, they have to follow certain rules. Because society will be, cannot be just individual, each individual deciding their own rules, it will be a chaos. That is no longer possible. It was possible maybe some centuries ago, but not possible today. So as I was saying, without losing that individualistic living in society, but that possibility of individuals growing, developing, can you develop that society with obviously the limitations of that thinking? You have to follow somewhere. Like even in marriage, you accept the reality that two individuals are coming together, but doesn't mean that husband and wife can have anything to do. There's chaos in the life of human, that particular family life. So obviously you accept certain rules that husband can do so much and wife can do so much. And on certain area, they'll work together. So society will have to accept this important rule that individuals have an ability to grow so much, but they will follow certain rules to remain as members of the society. But can we develop that tomorrow's India on these possibilities of individuals' ability to grow in a manner that can bring in the kind of changes that he envisages for himself, but as a collectively, we'll also have the ability to think about how can I develop my fellow citizen along with me and take them to a different level. Now that development, then we'll have to redefine. Economic progress obviously has to be there, because otherwise there are so many people living in poverty, you cannot tell them live by thought alone. That is something which will be the most gravest crime one could commit. And again, going back to Gandhiji, who had always said that how can you expect to sleep in peace when your neighbor is going hungry? So that is something which is basic human right? We have to make sure that we work for others as well, to make sure that we make them. So economic progress is a must for that purpose. Then becomes, as I said, can economic progress also be hastened because of technology? Possible. That's why use best technology is possible so that we can have a higher economic progress. So doing all this, can we also ensure that we do not lose the sight of quality of life? And that quality of life will have to be redefined. One of the problem, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but environment is very important. And ensure that the entire future growth will happen on the basis of that. In fact, I'll tell you something. I'm sorry I ran out of time because I just saw the time. We should ended by this time. But I'm just making last 1 or 2 comments and I'll stop. But one thing I'm saying is, if you're posing this question to yourself and to others about the reimagining India, very important question. Because if you don't have a question, how will you find the answer? So the posing question is the beginning of a process. That's how when in spirituality you start first challenging yourself that why I'm born, then becomes the reason for finding out why you are here. So the question is important is reimagining. At the time we are posing this question, when virtually everywhere in the world, you are seeing the so-called perfect societies, so-called, all over the world are crumbling. Now in US, there is a very big campaign right now going on, Black Lives Matter. So, so we have to say this in the most developed economy of the world after so many decades, and then obviously somebody else just again giving a political spin to it is trying to say all lives matter. Obviously, who's challenging it? And all lives includes black lives. So you cannot say black lives matter. You want to change it to say all lives matter. So you are saying this when you ignore that reality that black lives matter. Anyway, point I'm saying is all over the world, you are seeing a crumbling of the established norms, which so-called, which in our own thinking was a model. This was the developed model. This is how we should try to grow. All over the world, I don't want to go to other countries and other issues, but I'm just saying, therefore, the question that you're posing is the right question. Now, so when we reimagine India, we should reimagine in this particular way, that we want to have economic progress, but also the social aspect, the disparities, that we don't have to say afterthought, after some years, that these lives also matter. I mean, we should try to integrate everybody. So the society that we must build, every person must feel he's part of that process of development. Otherwise, what is the use of that? I worked on that in some other areas. One day I'll talk to you how it can be done, but that is not point for topping today. And therefore, this is a right thing is to think today about that tomorrow's India. And it is possible. And I think everything in life is possible. Actually, that is one of the greatest things about life, is that you can do anything you want. The problem is sometimes we think too much about oneself and again guided by somebody else. So I don't want to buy a car till I see my neighbor buying a car. So my decision is not driven by my own comfort, but I want to do it because neighbor is getting it, so how can I be without it? So the problem, therefore, again, I'm going to the root cause of the problem, is that if you don't try to bring this originality of thinking in our own self to come to fore, which will guide tomorrow's society, which can never achieve something which you want to achieve. So I will stop here. As I said, I never planned to speak, so I never prepared a speech. So I just said something which I don't know, which is appropriate for your own thinking. But in my opinion, this is reimagination. Because you don't want to follow somebody's, otherwise you can get models. You open the book and nowadays Google I want this particular model. So they'll give 10 different options. I think let's develop our own thinking. That is how we were so-called a developed country those years, centuries ago. But today we cannot have the same model again. We cannot have that model. Today world has changed. So we have our own mind has changed. That is what exactly meant by evolution. So we have changed, our minds have changed, our thinking has changed, the world has changed. So we have to accept that. So we don't have to learn from there or copy from there. Of course, learn from everything, but not copy from there, but use our own thinking about what it should be that do it today. So anyway, thank you very much for bringing this
Thank you
new
for guiding us, sir.
thinking into this. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for guiding us. So just 2-3 quick questions in an interaction session. Since I got this opportunity, I want to start this session by asking the question on leadership front. So you talked about thinking your own abilities and capabilities through thought leadership. So sir, how can we combine 3 I's, individuals, institutions, and industries, to make a thought leadership approach in such a way that it can form the new pillars of India?
Now say individual,
Institutions and industries, sir. 3 I's.
industry,
Yes, sir.
industry.
Yes, sir. Individuals, institutions, and industries. 3 I forming the pillars of New India.
See, actually, the problem with all the I's is that we always think about I. So this is a very paradox of life. That I
Yes.
is so important that otherwise nobody can exist. But I becomes a problem sometimes. Because so therefore you should start with I, but not end with I. So if you start with I, it's good, because that is how the started thinking. And that's what I was saying, that we must start with our own self. But don't end with I. Let me start. That is the thinking part, but don't say that that is only I am going to think about myself. That's not the end of it. So if you can actually bring this. Now the question is what you're asking, very interesting one. So first, individuals will be the focal point of so-called development process. Institutions are extremely important, and that's what I was saying. If all individuals start thinking that I'm not bothered about who is my neighbor, who is my wife, who is nobody, I'm going to think about myself, there's a chaotic society. You cannot live like this. Even in the tribal societies, when the nomads became part of some sort of a small little enclave, they also accepted certain rules. There were tribal rules that you have to accept. So from there we are travel a long distance. So today institutions will become very important because institutions will govern the functioning of I, the first I, that is an individual. So institutions are extremely important to make I as part of society so that I can also remain, but institutions will ensure that I also remain in the particular limit of that I can operate. And then third, industry is very important again, because when you talk about industry in normal, common, today's modern world, you can call industry in a particular way. There's what constitutes industry when you, whether manufacturing, mining, construction, all that put into industry. But that's a definition, modern definition. But industry would mean to be industrious, to be something which you can create something which can be good, public good. You can create something. For example, just imagine agriculture. Now we call agriculture into a different branch because in GDP we will say industry, services and agriculture. But if you really look at it, agriculture itself, if people had not done agriculture, what was the choice they had? They had a choice of going around every now and then and do foraging, trying to do hunting, try to collect something, and they live like that. So the agriculture came. So agriculture is also in a way a form of creating some industrious, not industrial, industrious activity which has created some kind of a public good, which has helped society generally to benefit from it. So industry is as important as we talk about it, and in particularly more important in today's time because there are 7.5 billion people. We never had so many people on the planet anytime. So, and of course we are growing. So, and because we are growing at a rate faster than what the nature envisaged, we get these pandemics. See, the pandemic is a way of making sure that we restore the balance which we want to destroy as human beings. So when human being wants to destroy the balance and grow beyond a particular well, it can always happen. See, in nature, there are always predators which are born before the prey is born. So then you are actually trying to, because we thought we are so smart that we want to get rid of predator. So human being's predator is he himself. In fact, we actually are the cause of, we are the own predators for a human being because we create certain things which kill us directly or indirectly. The greed may be a predator for human beings also. So now the nature is trying to ensure that you want to be so smart. Okay, let me remind you. This is how you will go back. So I think industriousness, individuals and institutions, both are equally important as long as keep that alignment in place. We should not take it beyond a particular plan. See, that is how, if you take these three I's, then there is another one, which is soul, mind, and body. If you keep this aligned, there's never a problem. So this may not be falling into I category, but this is what ensures that the alignment remains intact, and that's what will keep life going. So today, all three should not be, I should not think that I'm so big, that first I, that individual, that I don't care for anybody. There will be a problem. Institution should not also become predator for an individual. If all institutions start eating individuals themselves, who has created an institution? Individuals. And the other institution starts eating the individual. That's harmful. So that's why institutions have to also realize and understand their own limitation. And industry, which is created as part of individuals contributing through institution and create an industry. So industry again must take those materials which are replenishable. You don't eat the material so much that you will run out of materials eventually. So that is cause of industry. So industry must also realize the limitation. That's a root cause And what you call environment degradation is that. Because industry is taking everything it can take in. As if there are thousands of planets available all over the here and there, so we can bring planet from here and bring this. So that is what your thinking is. That's how you're taking so much of material. So balance is extremely important. And therefore, I think all three eyes should look into our own eyes, into the limitation of that eyes.
Thank you, sir.
Akash, you can take a couple of questions, I think, because they've come on Q&A.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, so there are a couple of good questions. You can go to the Q&A and look at some of the very good questions have come, and maybe one and
Sure.
two you can ask Mr. Prabhu.
Sure, sir. Sure. Thank you, sir. Sir, I am combining my question with the audience question. So one of the audience question is that, and I'm combining both the questions. So, sir, since you said that you can follow the existing process, but you should build upon the new innovativeness through your individual capacities and creativity. So, sir, India has become, for the last decades, been a cost center for many of the global products and services. But, sir, with respect to global standards, India has not achieved so much in terms of standard quality. So, sir, how do you think India will grow in products and services globally in such a manner that it can reach global scales through building powerful products with creative standards, high creative standards?
You know, Shiv, you must firstly, let me tell you, I was telling you the limitation of each one of these eyes. So one is the first eye that you talked about, individual, and the last eye you talked about is industry. So let us, now this question relates to these eyes. One eye, that I can be very creative and I create some fantastic products. As long as I want to enjoy it and keep it in my own house, that's fine. But if I want to sell it to somebody else,
Yes.
that's the industry part, then I must be very conscious of the fact that either nobody stops you from painting some fantastic painting which nobody likes, but you enjoy it, fine, you keep it in your own house. But if you want to sell your painting, there must be a buyer. And that buyer has to pay for it the way that he feels is the right price. So ultimately, your creativity, if you want to make it only for own happiness and creativity, there is no problem. But if you want to use your creativity in a marketplace, you want to test it in a market where you can actually, people can buy it, then obviously you must keep that in mind when you develop your own product. Secondly, you must also think that I am not the only individual living in the planet. There are 7.5 other billion people living on the planet. So each one of them is also going to use their creativity to make something. So that may be in my own country or some other country in the world. And they are going to sell it to the same target group, which is going to buy that product from you. So ultimately, therefore, the creativity also demands that be creative enough to understand that what is that is going to be sellable in the marketplace. Can the sellability will come because of scalability? Possible. That's the mass production you're talking about. So sellability is probably, if you want to relate to scalability, because that will bring down the prices, hopefully, because of so much of mass production going on. In that case, you'll have to use the creativity. Does not only mean developing a product. As long as I said, you want to keep it to the confines of your four walls, fine. But if you want to use it in your village, your town, your city, your country, or globally, that will depend upon the market forces which will operate in each of these places. So choice is yours. Now India, therefore, we have to be very clear whether I want to sell something which I make in India globally. If I want to do that, firstly, the product may be the best, price may be the lowest, quality may be the super best, but still those countries must be able to accept your product. So you must have a market access to that country. The market access will depend upon whether you also allow that country to sell their products in your country. Unless I don't know whether Akash is married or not, but so many girls are looking at you. I'm sure Akash is going to be married soon. So if Akash's father-in-law, future father-in-law, you don't have a father-in-law yet, will say, whatever you do, you make, I'll buy, because you're finally married my daughter. So if we have father-in-laws all over the world who are going to say, whatever you sell, I'll buy. It's a different thing. Otherwise, most of the countries, for providing market access, will say, that market access is reciprocal. If you buy from me, I will buy from you. Now, that means our trade policies also must be aligned to your manufacturing policy. You cannot just by saying I am making the best product in the country, that's why it can be sold anywhere in the world. Not true. Market access is a completely different thing. In our own country, till Prime Minister Modi relaxed it only a few days ago, agriculture products were not allowed to be sold from Maharashtra to Karnataka, Karnataka to Tamil Nadu, their neighboring states. Not able to sell. Agriculture product was completely regulated. So regulation is bound to be there in countries as well. And now, particularly now when there is going to be more protectionism growing in the world. So you have to, therefore, India's manufacturing to grow, first we have to manufacture. We have to have a good quality. We have a good price. That is all minimum we have to do any case. But even then, our trade policies must be aligned in such a way that we will be able to export more. Today, our exports are only $330 billion. In fact, when I was a commerce industry minister, the lifetime high exports were recorded during my time. And I have seen the limitation of it. Therefore, I have prepared completely what should be the product that can be manufactured and which country, which geography it can go. I have prepared a matrix for it based on market research. So we have to use all these strategies to make it happen.
Thank you, sir. Sir, my next question, and I'll be asking two last questions, sir. So my next question would be on global front, sir. Since you're the, how do you look at the globalization issues going on? Should globalization be stopped in such a way that the globe will be a one unity factor, or do you think some boutique bilateral transaction between countries and continents happening around through customization, and there will be some deglobalization happening in certain parts of the world also?
Anything related to this, I can club the question and I can answer it.
No, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. This is
okay. This is the last question. I have to go for the other program. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. See, firstly, we have to be clear about what is globalization. Because as the question you're putting up is this way, that whether globalization or we can do bilateral trade. So bilateral trade is not globalization. If you want to go outside your own country and do some business with somebody else, is it not a part of that globalization you want to enter into? So globalization is a concept. It means that you will be able to integrate the markets of different countries with your own country so that you can benefit from it. Now, the process by which you do it can be different. You can do it through WTO, and that is how then India has been a part of GATT, which is earlier avatar of WTO called General Agreement of Tariff and Trade, which was founded in 1948. Or WTO, which subsequently became an organization after Mr. Dunkel. We made a very good, interesting draft of Swiss gentleman and made up WTO, which India had opposed with so many other countries, and now India is a strong supporter of it. So the point is, we want to enter global markets through WTO, or you want to enter global markets through bilateral trade? That is what your question is, actually speaking. You think you want to do bilateral agreements. It is so simple that you can do bilateral agreement. That's why we don't WTO. It's a WTO governs global trade. It's like a regulator. If somebody, you have to follow a particular rules to do global business. If somebody is flouting the rules, there is a dispute redressal mechanism under WTO, which you can access and try to use it. In bilateral agreement, your ability to deal with your trading partner with whom you want to make an agreement is dependent upon his strength and your relative strength. If I want to do it a much powerful country, a bilateral agreement, I will always be browbeaten by them. But if I am using WTO, in which all the countries of the world are the members, and each country in the world has a voice in this, it becomes a very good arrangement. That is called multilateralism. So globalization is not something which is either through, you can enter globalization by we want, India feels very strongly, rightly so, with so many other countries in the world, that multilateralism is the best form of doing global business. So now, firstly, we don't want globalization, fine, accept it. then why you want to export? So you want to export to be part of the global market? Then why you want to export? And if you want to export, those countries are going to say that all countries in the world, for example, we say that you can only export. Very good idea. But we'll also export. See, United States say that we'll only export to India, and India says we'll only export to US. Can it happen anytime? Somebody has to import so that some other country can export. So we have to accept the reality that give and take is bound to happen. Which is that best way to make that give and take to happen? Through bilaterally or through multilaterally? The multilateral form is the best way that stipulates regulation globally. So India is in strong favor of multilateralism. I will give my example. As Commerce and Industry Minister, I had organized the first time India probably organized is 2 mini ministerial. One in 2018 March. Second one was in 19th March, 2019 March. One was attended by 57 countries in the world. Mini ministerial don't happen with so many countries. But I presided over my invitation only to promote multilateralism. That's in India's interest. Because if we don't have multilateral approach, talking to individual countries and use our own bargaining strength with a much superior country, superior power, will be disadvantage to India. So we feel multilateralism is the best form. Thank you.
So last question I'll borrow from our Vice Chancellor, sir. He always asks the dignitaries, what are the 3 pieces of advice you will give to students and youth, sir? So I'll ask this question, sir, to an ending.
What is the question? What is the question?
What are the 3 pieces of advice you will give to students and youths of India, sir?
Youth of India. See, I am the wrong person to give advice to youth of India because I am an old man. So I think first and foremost, actually I'll tell you, this is something which I'm not saying from my own thing, but I keep quoting him. J. Krishnamurti used to say that be aware of your guru. I have a guru, I have worshipped my guru, but he's thinking about guru means not guru personification. Is that your own thinking is what is more important than my borrowed thinking to you. So my advice to you will be on your own. Think differently. Think about your own future very carefully. Draw it up in a way that will ensure that you progress. But again, I'm telling you, I'm repeating that point again and again. India's own, if you call Indian thought, has always been that we believed in our individual progress. And that is what spiritualism is all about, is to look within yourself to progress. But we never forgot the society. We always believed that my job is to do public good. The public good word itself was born much later. But we have always believed that that's how Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We feel that all members of my family have to be as happy as I am, or as happy as I want me to be. That's what my thinking. I may not be happy today, but I want to be. That is what my quest is. And therefore, I want all others to be as happy as I want myself to be. And that is what is the thought. So I think I will not give an advice, but I'll only tell you to look unto yourself, progress, and what is progress? Again, define yourself and try to work to do better for others. But if you want to do anything better for others, you must do better for yourself first. Only if you are not good enough, how can you do anything to others? If I want to do charity, because I see so many people on the street going starving, but I don't have any food with myself. It's a good idea that without having myself, I can give. But how many days I can do that? If I'm not strong enough, if I don't survive myself, how can I even think about others good? So be strong enough, then do others.
Thank you for your guidance, sir. It was an honor have you, sir, on the inaugural session of Vimarsha. I'll just hand over the space to our Dean of Flame School of Business, Dr. Dwarika Prasad Unyal, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Akash. Good morning, good afternoon, Shri Prabhu, Dr. Kamdar, and all the participants. It was an honor to have you, Mr. Prabhu, for the inaugural edition of this very, very thought-provoking leadership series. Very, very interestingly named also Vimarsha. I think this is the tradition which you talked about in ancient India, that discussion and deliberation and new knowledge development has always been part of our tradition in our age-old process as well of Shravan, Manan, Chintan, Dhyan, the way we have gone and become the Vishwa Guru as well. And thank you for your very, very enlightening, thought pieces I could think of, right from looking back to the history of India, how we have developed, how the economy of India was there, and what was the basis of that economy, which was based on the skill. So both levels India has been able to cover, right from the knowledge side of it, where it invented the zeros and the astronomy and sciences, metallurgy, to the economic activity side of the skill-based economy which India had. And there's a good thought now in the new age economy our students can think of. And you also talked about growth of individual. And I think that's a very, very interesting thought. And I really liked your idea about not look for models in the books, but imagine and think and deliberate and create your own thought processes so individually that the world might look for your model, not necessarily you can follow those and blindly copy. Learn from them, but don't copy. And third is predominantly to look at your individual social, economical, religious, spiritual growth, so that vikas should always be not just the Shakshanic vikas or the Arthik vikas. It should also be Bauddhik vikas, Mansik vikas as well. I think that's the way the India would now try to lead in this new new world order. For all others, my sincere thanks for joining in. Unfortunately, the time was less and we couldn't ask many questions, but we have noted them down. And also to tell the larger audience that this would be a monthly feature by the management consulting group. So Mr. Prabhu, you would be happy to know that these students walk the talk. So they run their own management consulting firm on campus. We just guide them, but they actually reach out to clients and they actually do what they learn in the classroom. So they actually work very, very closely with various industries and startups and work with them. And they manage their own money as well. So they are becoming Atmanirbhar. So they are trying to earn while they learn a little bit. And this is their initiatives. It's all led by them. So congratulations to Akash and Vajra team for doing this. And my sincere thanks to everybody who joined in. Thank you, Dr. Kamdar. Thank you, Professor Neeraj Muankar, who hosted this. And thank you, Mr. Prabhu, for your enlightening speech. And we look forward to having you on campus sooner. Hope this after this lockdown, and our wishes from the board, especially from Mr. Naimisha and Mr. Vallabh Bhansali as well. Thank you, everyone. And it was a great afternoon. Have a safe journey. Thank you.
Actually, thank you very much. But Akash will tell you the session was supposed to be only for 30 minutes. But we actually did 1 hour, yes. Exactly double of what that. So I think I wish we could have longer time, but I had other programs which I'm telling them I'll join it later.
I know. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.